Anyhow, the very next day, the coat warehouse called, arranging an interview for just before lunch the very next day, which means that Monica must have on a Monday dissembled. I was called and scheduled on Tuesday, and after an interview that was conducted, in all fairness, by one of the fairer cave trolls among southern breed ogrekin, offered a job on Wednesday, to forthwith, straight out of the interview thereafter, fill out the necessary information and provide electronic consent to the background checks prerequisite to employment. Because that between the last hours of Friday morning, I had already received a voicemail from my new boss, congratulatory for that my background check had quickly cleared, motivating me with notification that if I should manage to make it in that day after lunch in the early afternoon, I could complete the last forms, maneuver on a kiosk through 2 hours of video tutorial, finalize my employment, and be ready to begin and all set to start my first shift first thing Monday morning. I'm serious, it went just that quickly. But I mean, of course, I had no reason to distrust the employment opportunity based on the initial phone call, because first of all, I wouldn't know it until the next day, Wednesday, that on the phone I was talking with Latina on Tuesday. My prospective new boss, a mere decade since began her American experience, as divulged by her own disclosure in testimony to both her hard-working character, now one of but few assistant managers overseeing the many departments of the Oswego operation, and as example of such effort and ethic that she expected of her employees. Yet she retained almost none, but also was not utterly void, except only to a trace remnant of lingering accent of her native language. Or, that is, at the very least, she let not the more perfect vowel of Espanol transfer much impact on the elocution of her secondary English. She pronounced my first name better than perhaps any ELS Hispanic speaker that I've ever met, to give you an idea. For the unstressed, neutral schwa vowel that comprises its diphthongal second syllable, the diphthongal second of 2 syllables of my first name, such phonetic is not native to Spanish, and it gives most immigrants trouble. Secondly, though, albeit that but only 4 days prior I spoke in savage soliloquy against the absent Hispanics in my car, and my interview on just the 5th day since, and so, although it was not, yet it might easily have been fresh in my mind. At any rate, I hadn't theretofore decisively devoted, or didn't explicitly preoccupy my paranoia, at least not yet by that time, speculating solely on Hispanic conspiracy against me. As I'm a very hateable person, and again call me man, for that I'm contemptible, and as everybody is happy to hate anyway, why should Latins like me any less than the demographic of my own despised dispossession, to whom then for months, even still prior, I addressed in similar traveling soliloquy, but precisely because I addressed no race specifically, and which Caucasia then heard no less hateful digress. But that even my midday irate, 4 days of late, touched not to grandiosity, or shapeless schemes, but was all frustration. Relevant resentment, burned at last to boil. Hostility heated through recent weeks, and brought finally to rage and fuego. Mere commentary, though, and I might say acutely astute and prolific commentary, which, woven through various volume of clever, vicious, and veritably inviscerating insults, added insight to injury. On the effects of immigration to local economy, how that Hispanics come here and have double parasitic effect. And how is it not economic warfare that they arrive and devalue the price of all labor because you can pay these hicks a dime on the dollar to demean them with any degradation, for they have no pride, only an easily aroused defensive hostility, which, under the pretense of defending familial honor demographically, becomes violently aggressive and without much provocation, despite that such racially based offense and quick violence is not pride, but instead mere compensation for an internalized inferiority. Yet they have at all no dignity, otherwise stingy scumbags couldn't buy their labor dirt cheap, and make said bottom bid the economic standard among the dwindling production positions of the modern technologic workplace, driving down all wage below the board of directors. And at the same time, they deplete local commerce of vital resource, like catching a region's rainfall and diverting it a quarter world away to strain and siphon dry moisture within the near ecology. In that they earn income here, but rather than redistributing it, rechanneling it, recycling its monetary sustenance within the place that it was earned, instead they diminish disposable dollars out of the given region as by slow trickle, in taking by making wages then withdrawing wage away, like sustenance out of an economic environment, like vegetation out of an ecology crowded full and whole herbivore, by sending their income international to the old country back home, their wages out away from here. That even to deposit income into a savings account, in a sense also withdrawing its utility, still adds venture capital to the bank's available resource, theoretically, and its ability to invest funds in local initiatives. Listen to morons, though, claim that Hicks come here and do only jobs that Americans won't, but simply not true. Yet even if it were, they still take their income from those shitty jobs and send it in displaced away, deflating the volume of moving money within a region. Like letting blood from the vascular to leave the body faint and lethargic over a long draw. Oh, right, and lest we forget, and to reiterate, that if these filthy fucking barbarians would show some fucking pride and have just the tiniest hint of dignity and stop breaking their backs on some orchard to still but barely not starve, then farms would eventually be forced to incentivize new labor with better wage. Because no one is going to pay $2 goddamn ever for a fucking apple, regardless, so the cost of higher pay would come pretty much directly out of the corporate pockets of Big Ag. Very simplified, but more or less. But besides that, at least around here where I'm at, retail almost unanimous has outsourced even its management, but only domestically. That immigrants can constitute around here most of the retail labor force from management down. And these Hispaniards abide strictly by the spoil system, and network like nepotism, and staff sparsely in respects to us native white gringos, as exemplified at the coat warehouse, and by my 2 earlier failed August interviews with said type, because you can incentivize these awful hicks with an extra $2 an hour to instruct them onto inhumane hyperbole, like Laundra at the inn, to treat humanity like slaves and dehumanize their new neighbors of their relocation, which took them in, as well as their own dispossessed people, which neighbors too are paid minimum wage like immigrants. On behalf of corporate bannerheads, to practice as little compassionate consideration as managerially and as little kindness as personally possible, at which primitive prerogatives these hicks greatly excel. Even so, I'd be remiss, after meeting the alien creature that conducted the interview the next day, to claim that it didn't occur to me as something more than mere coincidence to be solicited into some more significant association by Hispanics again in such short span and so little time after my offensive soliloquy. For I had never in my life prior, under any circumstance, given voice to anything so vile, or potentially so fatally offensive, as what composed the material of my monologue against Hispanic males that day, alone in my car. And it's also like the prospect of its quiet infamy were utterly absent from my mind. If I had reason then, after Wednesday, to be wary, by the same time Friday I was bona fide suspicious. I got there and began the 2-hour tutorial, some about the early afternoon, but still many minutes before 1. My new boss on the phone, after congratulations, as she encouraged me to come in, had mentioned that her workday would be ending at 3, and my any arrival closer afternoon would be beneficial. The kiosks were in a little antechamber, first door on the right down the long corridor, immediately behind the broad doors at the back of the store, so labeled, permitting only staff beyond their threshold. There were 3 arranged in a row, little partitions separating between their 3 boxed-in screens, upon the long countertop that was constructed to hang fastened along the right wall upon through the door, underneath each of which a plastic classroom chair was pushed in neatly. As instructed, I had reported to her office directly upon my arrival, and my new boss led the way, without delay, into the adjacent little antechamber and logged me into the middle of the 3 kiosks. That the new hire not simply nod off, The training tutorial is divided into a dozen or so individual videos, with a short quiz at the end of each one that tests the employee's comprehension of the subject matter discussed therein. The introduction even had a quiz, a silly little parody of the whole process. If you're watching this video, you should A. Be ready to embark on an exciting new career path. B. Be prepared to learn how to become the best teammate you can be. C. Be excited to join a winning team. Or D. All of the above. The answer being, of course, none of the above, but letter Y, as in, why not just kill yourself right now? Or else, why not take this opportunity to give grave and serious reflection to the many myriad and clearly all wrong choices that have led you to this point? I've sat through many such training videos, as two I've called job, many a dead-end position. And they're all the same, basically, the litigated product of hundreds, perhaps thousands, of aggregate hours billed to some large corporate-scale consulting firm. Companies conceptually conceived through metric like adding organ to grand economic bodies of gigantic accumulation, unto an ever more diverse dispersal of its monetary respirate. Imagine trillion-dollar engines, each manufacturing million-dollar components to circulate, and paradoxically in greater division, consolidate billions between and through each other, but ultimately unto themselves. This training video was uniquely comedic, though, insomuch that the last section of those that comprised the body of the tutorial's bullet points was called Tricks of the Trade, presumably left for last to let the tougher topics weed out stragglers, for that its section divulged little industry secrets, trade practices specific to its franchise. And I suppose if one cannot wad one's way, whether having slept or stayed awake, through such tested material as, during your shift, after utilizing the restroom facilities, you should always A. Pause for a moment and admire the mess you've made. B. Keep defying your mother's incessant bitching about your pissing on the seat. C. Return to work without practicing healthy work habits, with an underlined blue link in parentheses next to it, allowing stump testes to go back and give its prior lecture a quick impromptu view. Or D. Wash your hands with soap and warm water for at least 30 seconds. If such things should prove troublesome, well, good thing we didn't let the cat out of the bag, or trust prematurely this more capable brain injury with the savvy tactics clandestine to our company, lest he share them later with the other donors at the sperm bank. One juicy little gem I did learn, though, among these coveted trade tricks, is the way the coat warehouse deliberately scatters its inventory throughout its aisles. While working, as you trudge despondent around your designated work area, you may notice that multiple units of the same product, or the same type of product, are separated at various different locations along our shelves. Psst! Don't displace them. It's strategic. We do that on purpose. And it's not only one of our company's tricks of the trade, but it's also one of the unique charms that have made us world famous. This encourages shoppers to spend more time exploring our merchandise, enticing them to slow down and peruse more carefully through our products, to scan the shelves more closely as they search for that next great deal. In other words, we provide forum like pretense, and our wares are like entrance fees, charged unto vacuous housewives who are out and about, but merely and only so from the house to be out, gratifying their vanity and illustrating society's cold venue, buying trifling trinkets they don't need, but to loiter listless down our scattered aisles, and thereby, to some deficient degree, feed our starved human urge for the socialization that we're all so drastically today deprived of, and have dwindling outlet to indulge or engage, and even fewer free of charge or consumption or cost. Otherwise, it's like, how many versions do you need to perform the same purpose? In my 2 days at the quote warehouse, half during the first and half during the second, I must have racked 200 plastic-colored spatulas between the same 3 kitchenware brands. So either there was suddenly a spatula shortage among this Cain Kendall populace, or the homes of bored housewives hoard 10 apiece, vigilant, prepared, to never forget that awful July 4th fiasco, or ever allow repeat of that great grill out debacle in that fated summer of '72, when there were, withal, just too many, simply too many hamburgers placed recklessly upon grill grates aflame, and on hand not nearly enough spatulas at all withal to flip them, under such charred cost and ground chuck overcooked. But forgive my forget me, and remit my permit me, that I make light and so silly digress, and at such long length amidst how ugly a subject. My tact, I'll admit me, would many to hit me, or else then to pit me, and cause them commit me. But jesting in this joust aside, I was somewhere midway through the training videos, and what breed of young, vibrant beauty should, by my new boss, be let in, logged in, and sat down close by, before being left alone, to begin her own training tutorial beside me? You guessed it, another gorgeous girl of our generous Lady of Guadalupe. A fantastic female of her Holy Virgin Mother's fair-skin spectrum. Her hair springy vivacious, wild waves, in auburn and fuego, which lovely young Latina, like me, was newly hired, and to start too on Monday. But I was skeptical right off. That immediately I knew that she was too good to be true. And like I said, I left there Friday already suspicious. Yet there I was, half done, with the training module that hardly at all required attention, and now sharing with this wonderful young señorita, and among worldly woman's most heavenly beings, the intimate silence of this secluded little enclosure. And she, in her big, dark dove's eyes, she broke the ice with me. She shattered the silence by speaking to me, and not once, but twice. We started out in the quiet built between us for some few minutes, then abruptly, to my half shock but my whole happy delight, this holy, beautiful, holy angel is looking at me. Her mouth is moving, and she's speaking words directed at me. I hardly hear them, though, for incredulity. But she was curious if I, like her, was also newly hired, and then how long ago it was that I started with the training videos. Of course, I was receptive, then attentive, then inviting to her discourse, even despite, of course, my practiced pedigree and profound olfactory for bullshit, for that I do not approach my life any longer anyway, since my completion of parole anyhow, as though imprisoned. I merely feel the cold incarceration of the cage I wear. And I certainly do not forbear to fraternize, or that is, would not, if or whenever opportunity presents itself, nor would pass on pretense or presume any prohibition or hesitation regarding Latinas just because Latino is less than like me. I'm just diligently dubious, and now demographically, but especially towards prospects so wonderful and of such convenient premise. Yet always, by now, towards acquaintance, or introduction, or association, so outside my control, or so without the influence of my any instigation. Insomuch that if I should acquaint myself, by chance, with a stranger at the library, the occurrence might as well be random, for I've exerted a measure of influence over the encounter. I chose to be at the library. Someone might even anticipate me maybe going to the library, for let's presume that occasionally I do. Yet unless they've got somebody everywhere that I'm wont to go, if I on a whim stop by the library and she's already there, and we become acquainted, then there's enough randomness in my autonomy that I less need to question pleasant happenstance. On the other hand, however, if I'm issued a summons to traffic court because I was speeding, it well behooves me by now to be wary of anyone that tries to elicit my interaction while I'm there. For anybody can send anyone to be there when I'm there because I'm there, and they do. That long since, by now, such context is compromised before it commences, for that the surface area of circumstances has become too easily manipulatable if I must be somewhere. Yet, while in my head I'm like, holy God, how is this right now happening? Rather than pursue too strongly and perhaps make her regret initiating contact, with enough participation and eager enough portrayal, I let our brief dialogue shortly die off and allowed lapse for her to return to her training. After some few minutes more, though, when again she turned with inquiry my way, wondering if I knew how long the training was supposed to take, and if all the videos went by so slowly, for she already was bored. Letting twice suffice, I retracted my original reserve, in that were she not, by the decisive inspection of sight, interested, or at the very least not uninterested, she would not likely have once had surrendered discretion, or so extended permission to discern what may. So that we subsequently engaged in small talk, and stepped around the common chit-chat, and I provided her with the quiz answers, while we were becoming quietly acquainted, until I was confronted with the multiple choices of the last question, posed as another playful parody. To conclude the accomplished modules, now that you've completed your training, you should A. Be ready to start your first day, B. Be eager to embark on your exciting new career, C. Start getting your affairs in order, as you'll soon be dead on the inside and suicidal not many days hence, or D. A and B. And while D, of course, was the accepted answer, C still seems much more right to me. Yet it was again the unlisted option. Some unseen letter I, as in, I cannot believe that this bullshit took so long. What an utter waste of time I found that to be. And there goes 2 hours of my life, which I will never get back. Which might have provided the most correct alternative, or else so most normally would have, under any less circumstance than that this Miss Seraphim Senorita sat beside, spoke unto, and shared smiles with me. Despite our disagreement, though, and reasonable discrepancy, D was the only option that the human resource occupation, the face of human resource, the HR interface, the kiosk would accept, which, once my having selected, thereby officially completed my training. And the two of us, she and I, we said our goodbye, and with farewell, speculated that we should perhaps and hopefully have chance to talk more when we should see each other come Monday. Before then I took my leave. That was Friday. But like I said, I knew better than to trust it. And so flew to Monday, though. Hi, hello, hola, senorita. Then how the first day at work might go. Slow, flustering, foggy, something somewhere incoherent. But that also might be the after effects of fight or flight physiology, when once your surroundings settle in, surrounding you, come and gone unutilized, initiated but neither option enacted, neither end of adrenaline selected, yet hormone activated notwithstanding, to leave you now feeling nauseous. Something translucent, like it's a wonderful life, or still might be. And there you are, leading you ahead of yourself, some glum future tense part of you. Oh, Jesus. I keep